Hey, Vertigo listeners, welcome back to another episode. Thank you for tuning in. And let's talk a little bit about Air Healing and Wellness. That's EIR, Air Healing and Wellness. If you're not there getting a massage, relaxing, and rejuvenating, sitting in the sauna, or maybe even grabbing a bite at Deja Brew, then what are you doing? Let's go. 5752 U.S. Route 11, Pulaski, New York. That's Air, EIR, Healing and Wellness. You need to get there. Now on to the episode.
Old school. He looks like a radio. Yeah, I say that every one of my. I think I mentioned. Like when I got the headset on, I'm in the zone.
Hey, Vertigo Nation. Welcome back to another episode. Thank you for finding me. If you're new here, thank you so much. I hope this conversation makes your head spin and that you enjoy yourself while you're here. And for those who are regular listeners, thank you so much for your support. And today I have a special guest, Miss Kelly.
Hello.
Also known as KJ from back in the day. That's right.
KJ from back in the day.
That's right. That's
what?
Right. A little J-Lo. But anyway,
I
Kelly.
wish.
Yeah. Right. We could use some J-Lo money up in here.
Right.
But Kelly is my sister, and so happy that you drove up today. I was we were just laughing because she had sent me her ETA through Apple Maps. And then you pulled into the neighbor's driveway and are trying to call me. Well, because Indy is joining us in the studio today, she likes to sleep under the table. She had gotten excited because so what had happened was I stood up to leave because I knew that it was about the time that you were supposed to be here. So I was actually going to go outside to make sure that you saw me. Well, she went under the microphones and wiped out my table here. So all the mics ended up on the floor. The thing came unplugged from the computer. So I was like, shit. So I'm hurrying up, trying to clean everything up. And then you're calling me, and I can't find my phone because in the midst of it, it had fallen. Because I tried to catch the mics, it had fallen onto the floor. So yeah, anyway.
Isn't life a debacle?
For me.
Listen, this is what happens. And so I always have a really hard time estimating the number of feet when I'm driving. So when GPS is like, in 400 feet, turn left, but I'm going, several miles an hour. What is 400 feet? I don't know, and I don't want to go past it. And so I always react too early. So yes, I pull into your neighbor's, and I believe that it's your house because they have the same exact vehicle as you, to the same color, everything.
Right.
And then this smaller black lab comes running out to the car. So I proceed to get out of the car, pet the dog that is not yours.
It's not my dog.
And then I look over and there's this small child staring at me, and I thought, I don't know him.
Yeah.
And I'm a stranger. Right. So I just got back in my car and left.
Right. Well, that's
and here
good.
I am.
Yeah, and you made it. And you made it. So yeah. So
if you're Sean's neighbor and you're listening, I deeply apologize, and I am no threat.
That's right. Oh my God.
I'm a nice lady.
That's right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Though, I was just more. I didn't know because there's a house out back too. So I was like, gosh, if you went out back, which I mean, you would have found it. Mm-hmm. We're here. Yeah. This is Amish country.
It is. I saw that.
Yep.
Yeah, I came from the big city.
That's right. The big.
we have 2 bridges where I live.
Oh my God. So, anyway, with that being said, so one of the things that I was talking about, and I'm going to turn my mic down just a little bit. Wow. Sorry about that, listeners. One of the things that I was thinking about when knowing that you were coming on. So first I got to admit, I was like going through I'm like, what's a good topic, What's a good topic for us to talk about? And I'm like, we could do this, we could do that. Like, for example, I know that you work for a not-for-profit and you're doing a lot of good work. And I thought, like, that would be really cool. And we can talk about all that stuff. But one of the things that we had always connected on was music. Mm-hmm. And I know, like, you had played out and you had played live and, you know, played with bands and other people and whatnot, I had kind of done the same thing. So originally my thought was like, we should talk about like music and you know, how music has kind of been like the soundtrack or backdrop. But as I started actually setting up this morning, I'm like, well, I think what I really was thinking about and where I really was heading with that was thinking about phases of our lives. Because as we were talking about before the mics went live, I am about to have a birthday and be 49 years old, which seems fucking impossible.
49 and holding.
That's right. Yeah, just holding the line. But what I think about, and I wonder if other people feel like this too, who have siblings and such, but it's like, as you were coming, I'm like, yeah, Kelly's coming and whatnot. And it's like in my mind, though, we're still like those high school years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're still like, I don't know, like I'm like 19, 20, you're, you know what, you know, 16, or not 16, like 13, 14, 15. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and it's interesting because when I feel like when siblings are together, we kind of all revert back to like our position in the family and stuff
you know,
too.
that's kind of a good point. I never thought about that.
Yeah. So I don't know what it's like for you being the oldest because I clearly
That's
am,
a good point.
I'm not. I'm number 3, but you know, I feel like I still rock the middle child thing pretty well. You know?
Yeah,
And it's like you just automatically like kind of assume your role, you know. In a good way, it's nothing negative.
No, it's not like this,
you
like,
know.
we need deep-seated therapy over it.
No.
You know, but you're right, though. You're absolutely right. I never thought, and that, I think that's what I was thinking about. Just didn't have a word or, a thought for it. But you're right. We all kind of fall into our
We fall
positions.
in line. Yeah. Pecking order.
Yeah.
That's how it is, you know. And it's like, yeah.
So what is that like, I guess, because I don't have that experience. So like when you say you fall into that, like for you, what do you think some of the definitions of that are, I guess? Now I'm curious.
Peacekeeper, go with the flow. Nothing, you know, doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do. What do you want to eat? Well, whatever you want, you know. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm easygoing, you know.
Yeah, just
part of that
kinda
is like my, my astrological position. I feel like, you know, my birth chart. So that plays a role, but you know, I'm a Leo, but I'm a Taurus rising and Taurus moon and all of that. So, you know, It makes me pretty chill. But I think that being the third one, and there's one younger than you when you're little that maybe needs things, and so you kind of take a back seat. Not a back seat. That sounds negative, and it's not negative.
No, it's just what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that, no judgments here, and not in the Vertigo studio, at least. Like, we just talk real, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
but yeah, I guess I just, because I think about that, like I obviously being the oldest, I guess I never really thought about it from a perspective of there's 4 of us, and I never really thought about the perspective of like what each one is in their, you know, because we all would have had different experience just based on that alone. And I guess I feel like obviously I've seen that or known that. I've gone to college. I've done, you know, had to do the social sciences, and everybody's taken psychology in it. So I feel like it had to have come up at some point in time, family models and these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But I guess I never really thought about it in terms of us, you know?
Yeah. No, it's just normal, and it's not like, and I like that about myself. I like that it takes a lot to like rock my boat, you know. I am very versatile. I can get along with pretty much anybody, and I like that. I don't want to feel like it's difficult to make decisions or things have to be my way, or you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I don't mind it, but I do think that part of that comes with just, you know, where you are in line.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never really thought about that that way. So, but phases of life, because kind of thinking about that, it's funny because like as you were, and I think maybe not even age is necessarily attached to that. Like for one of the things that I laugh about, for example, and this started leading to a good story, and I was like, hold that story because we gotta go live, we gotta get this, we gotta capture this. But you brought up such a good point. But one of the things that I think for me that I remember about you, and it's funny, and I kind of want to hear your opinion back on this too, on your opinion of me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because I think it's cool, but I also think it's funny. So like I think see you as that young vibrant, high school, following fish around. Like like you were like, in a lot of ways. I remember you went to Florida. It was a New Year's Eve right show.
Yes, and it was the year that we were going from 1999 to 2000.
Y2K.
And Y2K. Yes, everyone had 50 canned hams in their pantry just in case the world was going to end.
Stopped.
I remember I worked at local grocery store at that time, and there were all these, quotes, air quotes here, guys, experts coming in to look at the cash registers and see if they were going to, make it to 2000 or if everything was going to shut down. And there was all this hype. But I also felt like we didn't really watch the news in our house. I don't remember anybody really paying too much attention to that stuff, or if they did, they didn't really talk about it in front of us.
So here's a good example of that. So two different experiences just over Y2K, because at that point for me, I'd already been out of high school 6 years. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that means I was what's 18 plus 6 would be 24, right? Am I right?
Sounds good.
Okay. Yeah,
6,
we'll
12,
go for it.
18, 24, yeah.
All right.
I have an accounting degree, by the way, which is not math.
I know. How is accounting not math? We'll go there. We'll go there. But you're right. 1 and 1 in the accounting world is not 2.
I mean, it could be, but you don't really do math.
Right.
But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
also, I have ADHD, so that's going to pop up.
You've got two of us. You got 2 of us then. I don't know if you finished
Family
listening.
trait.
Yeah, Andy and I were just talking about that on the last episode. So yeah, Andy part 2. We were talking about adult ADHD, and now it's become a running joke between the 2 of us, because he had made a comment the other day in text, and I said, "Great, man," because now all I can think about is this song. Mm-hmm. And he's like, isn't adult ADHD great? So I was like, yeah.
Yep.
But anyway, so it's like funny, because my experience with Y2K, going back to that for a minute, was I was working in an adult group home at the time. And I remember we were planning this huge New Year's Eve party with another house. So, there were several houses that were going to get together and throw kind of a party for all the guys that were living in the house. Mm-hmm. And I remember not really seeming to care too much, I guess, about the Y2K component of it. Because I guess in my mind, I'm like, I don't know. I just had this really I don't think this is really going to be a thing. I just didn't believe it, I guess. So, I mean,
I was the same way. I had no anxiety about it at all. Yeah. I was on airplanes that week and everything, and then I was down in the Everglades.
Right, yeah.
Not even thinking about it.
Well,
no
and
worry.
If you think about it, from that, if the world was really worried, why were they still allowing people to fly and shit, right? I mean, if we think about in hindsight, right? I mean, there was mass hysteria then, but why were planes? Were they just going to fall out of the sky?
Well, that was a different time. That was back when things were simpler, before the interweb.
Yeah, that's right, the interweb. And even that's Jesus. So anyway, I still see, I guess, that traveling down to see fish and whatnot, which I thought was so cool, obviously at that time. But it's just so funny. So I wonder. So what is your memory? What is there something in your mind where I'm frozen in time?
I just always remember you being funny. Just always having something to laugh about, and that you're still like that. You're grinning right now from ear to ear. You can't even help it.
I know it.
No, that's how I love to remember you. You know, because I feel like Sean always had something silly, or he was the one, lighting farts on fire in the hotel rooms when, and stuff. It was like you just. We're
gonna have to put a disclaimer on this episode.
Yeah, and I don't know. Those are things I like to hold on to. Talk about childhood and stuff. I'm like, let's think of all the good things, and that's how I remember you.
It's just funny. Yeah, I know. So how do you feel how do you see the phases in your life?
In my life.
Yeah, I mean, how do you see them? Because like I said, it's funny as we age, I obviously remember, so it's there's moons, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And it's I see you as this younger, I don't want to say rebellious. It was like, because I think
I really wasn't, but I had that label.
It wasn't rebellion. I don't know what the proper, because it was like almost like a hippie generation all over again. Fish was huge at that point in time. It's not like you were the only one. I remember they came to Fulton, for crying out loud. Remember Fish came to Fulton? And
I was there.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. So I see these phases, and then I remember Emma being, born, and I kind of remember these phases. It's like, but at no point did we get older, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So there's these phases that are happening, but like, never did we get older, I guess.
That's how it feels.
Yeah.
When it's really fun right now, the stages my kids are in, because Emma's going to be 21 in a month, and Liam is going to be 17 this summer, and, she's almost done with college. He's picking out of college, and they both they're just amazing, but they're so fun. Mm-hmm. They're hilarious. Oh my God, nobody makes me laugh like my kids, and when I'm hanging out with them, I'm not ever going to be that mom that was like, we've just always been best friends. I mother my kids, but I feel like they are pretty solid at the ages they're at right now. They know who they are, and they're respectful people and stuff, so it's okay to lighten up a little bit, and maybe ditch the filter, that maybe I had to have when they were younger. And they just are such a good time, and that makes me feel young. I forget that I am so much older than them.
Yeah, I think kids have a way of doing that, I think.
Yeah.
Because I think about it too. And I think that you're right. It's funny because, you talked about, Emma turning 21, or it is 21, or turning
She'll
21.
be 21 next month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, May.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, and that's the other thing, because I still think even of Emma as, I remember her as, I don't want to say toddler. I can't, because I don't remember. I remember when she came to Shawnee's birthday party, and I had to go grab something. I don't know if I had to grab the cake or remember, but she rode with me, and we stopped at the park so she could slide down, because remember, I just remember that when she was, I forget even which park it was. I think it was at the Catholic church,
maybe,
and I remember her saying Uncle Sean, that's a huge slide. I'm like, we better go down that slide, right?
That's so awesome that you did that.
Yeah, so I just remember, so it's funny because, she's 21, and obviously I see pictures of her or whatnot. I know she's older, but the brain is still God, I remember when she was 4 or 5, 6 years old. So it's just crazy, I think. And that's what I mean, these weird phases that you just kind of freeze in time, you know what I mean? And how much it's just weird to sit here and think about how much we've actually even changed beyond those people, I think. You know what I mean?
My goodness. I think I've done more changing from the time I had my kids to this point than ever.
Yeah.
So much growth, because I think for me, when I started parenting, and, Chris and I have been married almost 22 years now.
That's incredible.
And and as you go through things and work through things, you have to work on yourself, right? And so it forces us to kind of look back and go, oh, I know why I felt that way, and grow from there.
What age do you think, and I'm just asking because I feel like 45 was a magic number for me, and I know you're not 45 yet.
No.
But for me, I don't know what happened at that point in time, but I feel like that's when I really started this journey of self-reflection, growth, really trying to make healthy changes for myself, realizing that my behaviors and maybe some of my attitude really led to, some of the, I don't know. It's just, that seemed to be the phase where I became really reflective, I guess. I don't know how else to really put it. And then also, though, not just think about it, but then actively also try to make some better changes, right? So when was that? I guess what I'm saying is, when was that for you? Or have you, is that a phase you feel like you're entering? Is that what you're explaining?
I feel like I'm on the other side of it now.
Okay.
And not to say that I'm done. We will grow and learn about ourselves until the day we leave this earth. But
sure.
I think for me, I started noticing it probably in my mid-20s, but I was just noticing it, just noticing the symptoms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so probably by the time I was in like my early 30s, and I'm like, well, I don't know why I feel this way or notice these things, but maybe it's time for like some real counseling and therapy and stuff. And that was like a huge move for me because at that time I was still very involved in the evangelical church. And so to do things like counseling in a secular way was frowned upon. But I was also in the process of deconstructing from all of that. So, I would say by the time I started there and got to like 38, 38 was a very pivotal point for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I really was like, okay, I'm stepping out, opening the cocoon and like, here I am.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it.
Now,
kind of thing.
and I don't want to interrupt you, so I apologize. But
No.
One of the things that kind of comes to mind as you're telling this is what's cool is generations, I think, right? Like, so me explaining at 45, but it was really 38. And I think that's the cool thing. And I'm wondering, like, if we had even Caitlin here, who's our younger sister, like, if she had experienced that and at what age, and I would almost put money on that. I wonder if it's even younger for her that maybe she had this, like, epiphany for her life. And I wonder...
Could be. She's 38 right now, right? Yeah, 38, 39,
Is she?
44. Or is she 39? She's 39. Oh my God. Sorry, Kate. She's 39.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Because I was gonna say she's about she's 9 years technically, but 10 years by number.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna be 49. She's 39.
Right. Because you have an early birthday and she has a late birthday.
Exactly. So and then a few months later she'll turn 40 then.
She'll be 40 in September. Because
then we'll be back to 9 years apart numerically. Yep. That's how I remember it.
Yeah, because we're all
Holy
technically
shit, man.
3 years apart. We're like every 3 years. Bing, bing, bing.
Yeah, it was
Here we go.
Talk about phases.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Yep.
time.
It's time. Oh my God. It is weird when you think about like just psychology and the way the universe works and whatnot. Like I wonder what 3 years, like 3 years around the sun, and then all of a sudden it's like time. It's like what happens in the psyche that it's like, oh, we gotta have a kid. Right? Like, that's what's missing here. It's
Tis
time
the
to have
season.
right. Oh, that's what. Yeah, it's been 3. We gotta have a kid. So anyway, what about 38 for you? I want to get back on that because you're drawing me in here to this. So what 38? Why 38? Like what was going on for you then?
So I think it was maybe like a year or two before that, probably 2 years before that, we had officially like left the church.
Okay.
And I don't mean any of this in any sort of way
No.
anyone that practices whatever, but just for us, that was the best thing.
Yeah.
And it was, it took Chris a little while longer just because and that's his story to tell. I'm not going to really get into that. But we grew up in very different types of churches. So like my upbringing in church, I felt like, and maybe yours, I don't know.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like for me, it was a very positive upbringing in the Lutheran Church. I felt like we learned about loving our neighbor and serving our neighbor and doing things out of goodness because that's what was done for us. And I didn't really, until maybe like 1 or 2 things when I was a teenager, I really never felt like it was about sin so much as it was about grace. But
okay.
when I joined Chris's family, who came from a more conservative background and a different type of church that would fall into like the Wesleyan side of doctrine, it got very institutional for me.
Okay.
And again, for any listeners that are listening, like I love you and wish you the very best, and whatever is good for you, do that,
Yeah,
but this
absolutely.
is just how it was for me.
And I think it's important to note that everybody's experience is their experience.
Exactly.
So it's all a very personal experience. And I think that it's always difficult when we talk about religion.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure, at least I think that you probably feel similar to me in the sense that I'm not trying to offend anybody.
No.
But at the same time, I'm trying to talk about like what my experience is. And I think that's important. And so
Yep.
I also think that that true freedom means that we have to be able to believe what we individually believe. And we don't have to like it from, I don't have to like what you believe, but the fact that it's your experience and it's your experience to have, that's just my thing on it. So anyway.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you hit a space where what you had experienced in the past and what you were currently experiencing wasn't jiving.
It was very contradictive. And I felt like every time I would feel motivated to do something out of love or servitude, there was like some reason why that person couldn't just be loved the way they are, and that there's so many things. So that's kind of where it started for me. And just seeing the way it was infiltrating my family, and, really taking a look at my little kids. They were very little at the time, and going like, is this
what I want?
I want them to wrestle with for the rest of their lives. And in my heart, I really felt like, no, that's their journey. They need to be able to decide that for themselves. And so, that was a couple of years. That was a really difficult few years for me. But by the time we had officially kind of left, because we were very active.
I do. Yeah.
And Chris, my husband, he was ordained and very heavily involved in the ministry aspect. And so, and we were very young and had a lot of, long-term church members that were kind of, steering the ship or, out of goodness of their heart, trying to do what they thought was right and teach us what they thought was right.
Yeah.
But it wasn't right for us. And
see, that's the hard part. Do you mind if I pause for?
Yeah, please.
So that's the hard part too. I think it's like I wrestle with this sometimes. People want to steer us, and not just in terms of religion. Just in life, this happens. I think.
Yeah.
People always want to try to steer us to have a certain experience because they had this experience, or maybe because they think it's just the right thing to do. I don't know. I don't think it comes out of malice, I guess is my point.
Right.
And but at the same time, it's difficult sometimes because like we learn from our own experiences, and I feel like as much as it's, I don't know how to wrestle with that. I guess even at my age now, I don't know how to, because it's like I don't want to poo-poo or put down somebody's experience and then them trying to help by guide. But at the same time, it's like I feel like what happens in those settings most often is people become pushy about it. And instead of like, okay, and not accepting the fact of like, I hear you, I hear your experience, I hear you, and I understand that you don't want that for me, but why is it not acceptable that I just don't want to go that route? Like, I want to be able to do this, and maybe it'll be a terrible experience, and maybe you're right at the end of it all, but at the same time, it's like, would you please just, shut up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A couple of things there, because I think this is true for so many facets of life, right? Politics, religion, of course, the two main ones. But I mean, education and jobs and finances. And even as parents, we have to, at some point, take our hands off.
Yeah,
right?
You're right.
And say, let them. Like Mel Robbins, have you ever heard her podcast about let them?
No.
Like it was about how her, she gave an example of her teenage son getting ready for prom and had this group of kids and they never orchestrated like their dinner plans. And she felt like, oh, they have to have this restaurant and the timing and the blah, 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 and make it all perfect and formal and beautiful. And they ended up going somewhere like fast food-ish or something like that, and they had the best time. And she's like, why did I feel like I needed to control that?
Right.
Why did I feel like it had to be my way? And she kind of, uses that as an example to say, Just let them.
Yeah.
You know, do we want our kids to just run out in traffic? No, of course not. But as they age, you know, we have to say, okay, their experience is not my experience. I'm not going to project everything that I went through on them.
Right.
And of course, there's a line there, you know, when we're talking about safety and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets so tough. I think because I agree with a lot of that. Like, you know, Sean needed to be, my son Sean, needed to be able to experience life.
My nephew Sean,
Yeah, exactly, right.
who's such a great dad. Love him.
Isn't he doing, yeah, man.
Yeah.
All the boys, you know, Maddox with his thing going on, Sean as a dad and just as a provider and these guys are such a light in my life, man.
Yeah.
Zach, and he is such an awesome dad to Paxton, and he has got so much knowledge. It's incredible. It's incredible. But anyway, before I digress down that, I'm just blessed in a lot of ways. But yeah, I hear you, and let them, I think, is such an incredible psychology. But yet, I also feel that panic of like, well, you know, we're both parents of older children now, so I think we have some insight that's different. It's like when I think of Sean now, and I think of like some of the things that I panicked about when he was younger, and I'm like, and look, he made it through these things just fine, and I needed to let him experience those things. I think is what I hear you saying. You know?
And
but
so
it doesn't stop the panic at times, though.
Right, but I think when we're, you know, and my point with that is like our kids are probably the nearest and dearest to us, right? The ones that we are concerned about the most. But when it comes to having tolerance and kind of leaving space for people to have their own beliefs, especially people that aren't even our children or like, you know, they're just other people, I kind of feel like those that maybe aren't following a particular doctrine are actually more tolerant and more open-minded oftentimes than those that do. And I'm trying to say that in a diplomatic way because, of course, it's different.
So now say it undiplomatic so I can I can digest it better.
Okay. Yeah, because maybe that was too vague. So I think that a lot of times evangelicals can be very forceful about what they think is right, and so then everyone should adhere to that. And, you know, and I understand where that comes from, and I also think that it's okay to say you accept people even if they don't do anything the way that you would, or just walk on, right? Shake the sand off your sandals and be on your way, you know? And just let them, just, you know.
No, I hear you.
You can live your life how you want.
Exactly. No, I think you're right. And I think that so we've got Indy in the studio, and she's not quite sure where she wants to go, but she's probably going to wipe my cords out again. So anyway, I think you're right. And that's fair. I think that's the biggest or the toughest thing I have with religion as a dogma or as a doctrine. I think I feel like a lot of people, I think, come at me when I have this discussion as saying that I'm being anti-Christian, anti-whatever, right? And I don't really feel like that at all. I just feel like spirituality is a very personal journey and a very personal choice.
Yes.
And I think that sometimes people get too power. I don't know what it's a form of control.
Yes.
It's used as a form of control.
It's oppressive.
Right. Yes, exactly. And to me, that's where I have a hard time with a lot of it. And that's not just any certain church in as far as doctrine. I feel like in general, it becomes very controlling.
Yes.
And it becomes very like I think about youth groups, and I think about all these things. And again, there's a lot of positivity that comes out of it, but I also kind of look at like, what are you selling? And sometimes to me that's where I get a little weary. It's like, what are you pushing and what are you peddling and why, and there's this fine line between, I think, allowing kids to be kids and then brainwashing, I don't know. So that's where I have, and I don't know how to, I would need somebody professionally to be here, like I don't know about a therapist or even a pastor or reverend, something to kind of help like guide that conversation, because I feel like I don't know. I feel like saying that religion and spirituality is very important to people also becomes a very prickly topic very quickly.
Yeah, I don't know how we got here. I probably shouldn't have.
No. This is what Vertigo's about. This is having tough. I feel like we need to model these tough conversations, but right. I also am admitting a little bit of weakness in this area because I don't know how to really talk about it without offending. Right. But I also know that my beliefs, like I think people would really be shocked. Like I don't not believe in a Christian God. Mm-hmm. But I don't necessarily believe in a Christian God. Like, I think, like, for me, I'm kind of one of these people who says, like, here's what I can guarantee. I believe that there is a higher power outside of myself, and I believe 100% that it's not me.
Right.
That's really as far as it goes for me. I don't really call that by name. Just, I understand that there is a power in this universe that is higher and is, I acknowledge it's there. Mm-hmm. I just don't call it anything. I don't, you know what I mean?
I'm still a very spiritual person. I've always been connected with nature ever since I was a little kid, Yeah,
me too.
Always outside.
I agree with that.
And that's still like my most happiest, peaceful place.
Being outside.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that real quick. I feel like I'm bogarting the conversation, so I apologize.
You're good.
But, I guess I'm excited at the fact of you being here and identifying with some of this stuff too, because I just said to Amanda the other day, I was like pacing. I pace the house, like, and she's like, what is going on? I'm like, I just need to be outside. Mm-hmm. I cannot wait for it to just be like, at least the same temperature. To like, let's just, I don't need it to be 80, 90. I just need it to be like at least consistently like 45 or consistently 50.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I
tolerable.
Just like, so it's, right. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I love to just walk through the woods and like forage for things. I try to study about different herbs and plants are so incredible. Like they're so incredible. And we look around and, so many people are like, I need the lawn chemical company to come. I don't want this, that, or the other thing. They're all weeds, whatever. And it's like that, whatever, do that, you do you. But there's so many powerful things that come from the earth that are just beautiful and do so much for us. And I feel like, it's kind of part of the American culture right now to maybe not notice that as much, So I don't know. I like to just take time and connect with stuff like that. I've had this like weird like love for moss ever since I was a kid. Yeah, I would always play in this one spot down by the creek in our backyard, and it was very mossy, and I loved to just like take my shoes off and like keep my feet in it, and I would like pet it, and I still do that now.
It's so crazy. Yeah. I know the spot that you're talking about. So Kelly, we grew up in the country, and we were blessed in the fact that we had a beautiful house, and we had a stream that ran down behind our house. And I describe it because I still have if there is any memory that I can say that it just absolutely brings a smile and or happy or joy, it is anytime I think about being down on the creek. Yeah. And I always think about that little rock island you could, and just, I don't know how many, so I just think it's cool that you bring this up, because I thought that was a memory or a feeling that was very much just me. But I remember being in that spot, and for some reason, that area was just like, that was the happiest place to be.
Yes.
You know?
Yep.
So it sounds like you had a similar experience. And I think the moss tree that you're talking about, was it that tree that...
Yes, it had there was no branches or anything on the bottom. It was very slender, and it had this curve that went up. Yes.
So I still visualize that place.
Yep. Yep. That was such a good spot. And I would always take my winter boots from the year before and put them on, and I would walk all through the creek and... You probably remember I was obsessed with frogs. Mm-hmm. I was always catching frogs and, checking them out and then setting them free. And the mussels that were in there that would spit at you, and crayfish, however everybody wants to say that. Sunfish.
Well, I think if we were in Louisiana, I think it's crawfish, but we're central New York, so it's crayfish. I think so. Are they the same species?
I don't know. Probably. They look very similar. People eat them, but not me.
You never ate them?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Really?
Yeah.
They're so good. They're very tasty.
They're so small. I feel like, you know how much work it is to eat crab legs?
Well, yeah.
And I don't know. It just creeps me out. I don't know why.
You only eat the tails typically. I mean, you could dig the claw meat out and stuff, but typically when they're in a boil or anything like that, you separate it and you eat the tail. I guess you could suck out the head of it like you do a lobster. I haven't been one to do that.
I'm not into that. I don't know. Texture is an issue for me. I can't do steamed clams and stuff either.
I keep saying that I'm going to get brave. I love seafood.
Me too, yeah.
Absolutely,
but that weird rubbery, slimy, jiggly stuff, I can't.
Yeah, so anyway, anyone who's ever ate a lobster, I know that they always suck out I don't even know what it is, I don't know what the fuck it is, man. It's gross to me. I've never done it, but everyone's like, dude, that's the best part. So I'm gonna muster up the strength one of these days to just suck that shit out. But
yeah, let me know.
I'm probably gonna need a good tequila chaser or something. I think I don't know, man. I don't know. But anyway, I remember that space, and so it's crazy. So I think too, my love for the outdoors started there as well.
Yeah, I would always go in the woods, and there was in the very back, where the property line was, there was a barbed wire fence that connected to the dairy farm around the corner from us, and I would slip through there and pet their cows and just kind of yeah, and I don't know, I just didn't think anything of it. I always just connected with animals very well. We always had stray cats in there and around the area, being surrounded by farms and stuff.
It's so true.
I just loved it. And I'm I never got poison ivy, and now I do. I get it at my house every summer, and it's horrible. And I'm how come I never got it when I was a kid? But
I can only remember, and I only got it once, and I'm pretty sure it was either poison oak or poison sumac, because I had got it after climbing a tree. But that was the only time I'd ever, even as an adult, I've never had poison ivy ever in my life.
I remember when you had it when you were a kid.
Yeah.
I also remember when you rolled through ground bees or a hornet nest or something. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
I remember that. I think I was probably 6 or 7.
God, yeah. I don't know. I can't believe I don't remember that.
I feel like you had a friend over or something, and you guys were monkeying around outside.
Oh, I'm sure. We were always wrestling and tussling and shit.
Yeah, and you rolled through ground bees and you got stung.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I don't remember that though. But I do. Yeah. There were definitely tons, especially back by the wood line and whatnot. I definitely remember there being ground bees, mud bees, and shit like that. So absolutely.
Yeah, I remember Dad putting gasoline in there and lighting it on fire.
I do remember. Yes, I do remember that. That was such a thing. It's funny because Amanda and I were just talking about that. She has a memory very similar, and now that you bring that up, I do remember Dad going and grabbing the gas can and dumping gas down the fucking hole and lighting it
on fire.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was well, okay. I guess they're gone.
Yeah.
But no, and Amanda was talking about too, how her grandfather did something similar. Their kids were all playing outside, and there was mud bees, and they ended up swarming them and whatnot. And he did the same exact thing, goes and grabs a gas can. Yeah, just turns the backyard into a pyro pit for a minute.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah, no, nothing to see, nothing to see. Just go ahead, carry
That's how
on
we
your
did
way.
it back in the
man.
80s, you know?
Yeah, dude, that was crazy.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, yeah, so I think you're right. There's definitely that connection with nature. And that's the thing. I think that people have different experiences. Like maybe some people do connect with, I don't know, okay. Maybe people do connect with, their version of a higher power in other areas, Maybe it's nature. Maybe it's in a certain spot, in an old house, in a building, whatever. So I think people can identify with that kind of thing. But I think it's always, and that's exactly why I think I say that I don't necessarily call higher power anything. It's just it's where you experience that pull, And so for me, yes, it's very much about being outside. I experience this pull towards my higher power, at least, I guess, right?
So my take on it is like we are spiritual beings, right? In some way, we're a spiritual being in a human body. Those things are separate, but they work together, walk together, whatever. And I have a difficult time accepting that everything in the Bible or any sort of religious document is word for word exactly how it is. I just have a really difficult time thinking that all of the translations are perfectly correct. And that there's not information missing or that we are misinterpreting what they're explaining because culturally things were so different and the language was different, not just in dialect, but in how words that you would use to describe what you mean.
Yeah.
There's so
I agree
much
with that.
with that.
Well, and you also think about the mysticism to it, like, chariots of fire driving across the sky and things like, especially when you start talking Revelations and stuff like that. And I don't want to start quoting Bible verses, but I just find it very interesting because I feel like that was almost the epiphany that I was having at 45. I felt like all of a sudden I just started, because I think part of it is, and this I think is the same no matter what denomination you belong to. You're not allowed to question. Like you cannot question things. You know what I mean? You're not supposed to question authority or whatnot. And I feel like there is a very natural part of our humanness that wants to question things. And I don't feel like that's a bad thing. And I feel like we, in general, at least in this country, stifle ourselves, our kids, our whoever, because it's like, no, you're not supposed to question things. And it's like, questioning things is pretty natural. You know what I mean? But one of the things I wanted to comment quick on is that I very much had a very similar type of experience where I started to I don't want to say I don't believe in the Bible. That's not, I think that there is a core message there that is important and believable.
Agreed.
But I also can't help but think that these are stories of authors that have written over generations of time. Not, I don't know, man. I just feel like there's some inconsistencies and things that I, as an adult, have began to question and think like, I just feel like there's more. Like I don't feel like the Bible is the end all be all. I feel like there's more. And it's probably more important what's missing than what's there, I guess, for me. The other thing I think that I want to say is I've heard some theories that I think are fucking hilarious and also could be true. And one of them I'm going to say is there is an author out there who wholeheartedly believes that the Bible was written on a bunch of dudes basically eating psychedelics in the Middle East and having these experiences where they were,
well, that's interesting.
It was kind of like, it was like the OG Grateful Dead. It was a bunch of dudes in the I can just see these dudes in the Gaza Strip or Israel or wherever the fuck they were at that point in their lives.
Oh boy.
Tripping balls on mushrooms, man, and then like writing down their experiences. And I mean, why could that not be true too? I'm just saying. Well, I don't know. I'm just saying,
Yes, and I think the point of all of that is to say that none of us actually know, right? Because we haven't been to the end of our existence as human in this form and whatever, however you want to word that. But we No one really knows. And so, yes, have faith in what you are led to have faith in, but also let people be who they are. If no one's hurting each other,
Yeah, man.
Just be peaceful with each other.
Let me ask you this. This is a crazy subject, and I know that a lot of people probably have some very... I'm just going to ask the question, but I know that there's people who are going to feel very emblazoned or very like...
Okay, so before you ask me, because you know your audience, you tell me if I should be blunt, diplomatic.
No, listen. Here's the thing. Vertigo is 100% about just having conversations. And again, I think the whole reason I feel like I'm here is just to demonstrate what it's like to have a healthy conversation.
Yeah.
And I also like, though, because I'm a little bastard, I like challenging thoughts, you know, and I like challenging what the norm is. So I also want to preference that doesn't mean I believe in what are these conspiracy theories. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. However, I like to dissect it and I like to think about it.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's the entertainment value. So there is a part of me that is just an entertainer at heart. So, you know, and then also thinking about what you said in the beginning of the podcast when we were talking about phases, which, you know, and you talked about how you remember me just always grinning. Yeah, there's a devilish side of me that just likes to stir the pot. So that's what vertigo is. It's all of that.
Okay.
And so here's the thing. You know, in the political climate that we are in now, there are certain things that I've seen that I've never seen before that are beginning to happen. And I don't want to talk about politics, but where I'm going with this...
Yeah, we get politics and religion in the same podcast. That'll be a shit show.
Oh, yeah. But my point being is that all of a sudden now there is an actual satanic church, and they are moving into like schools and things because there is a religious right for them to do that. And I'm just wondering, have you heard about this at all? The Church of Satan and all of this stuff?
I've heard, not currently, not recently, no, but I have heard in the past of satanic clubs at school that are not actually anything to do with what we would call evil.
Well, no, and that's the giant, I think, misconception here.
Right.
I think that the Church of Satan is using Satan to get under the skin of, but I think what it's really about is just, it's an opposite, or I don't even want to say opposite opinion, because it's not preaching hate, which would be the true opposite of Christian, or right? It's not preaching that at all. It's preaching freedom of thought. And it's kind of saying that Satanism, so it's not even like LaVeyan Satanism.
It's not demonic.
No, exactly. Yeah. It's actually saying that freedom of thought would be Satanism in the Christian ideology, because you're not allowed to have freedom of thought if you're a Christian, is what they're saying.
Right.
That's how I'm taking it.
Yeah.
I haven't, I did do some research, but basically what I gather from it in very simplistic terms is they're the secular, they're calling Satanism secular thought. And
could they have picked a different name? Probably, but maybe they think that they're bringing a lot of people in by using that name. I don't know.
Well, I think it's clickbait. Everything nowadays is clickbait, I think. So it's one, but two, I think it's very much about poking and prodding at the
it could be
Christian thought,
or because of our upbringing, and so therefore we have a natural bias or understanding of the word Satan and Satanism, in a certain way. Are we misinformed about what that actually is supposed to mean?
Yeah, that's a very good point too.
I don't know.
But the thing that I find interesting is now we're starting to see that the Church of I got to look this up. I'll look it up in a minute. But the Church of Satan is actually now a religious order. Like they're tax exempt. Now they don't hold church. They don't really do that kind of thing. But what they are doing is starting to go into schools, and they're starting to represent in schools, just like there's religious rights within schools. You can go and and this is down south more, I guess, but there's like religious counseling and things that happens in schools.
Yeah.
And so they're just saying we are the alternative to that, and that you can come. And they don't really talk about Satan. They're talking about secular, like what is wrong with the secular side of life or whatnot. So,
Right.
but I just wondered if you'd heard much about that and kind of what your viewpoint on that is.
I haven't heard about it recently, but I mean, that's something that I have read about in the past. And I feel like it was a couple years ago on social media, there was like a flyer or something going around, maybe one of like the Onondaga County school districts or something like that. And people were all up in arms. And because, as soon as they see that word, it's triggering for certain people. And so, they act on that. We went through that even in the Fulton School District when a student, they changed their mascot, right? Because they used to be the Red Raiders and then became the Raiders. And then, in respect for the Haudenosaunee people in our area, they decided that, I think New York State is really who decided, but that we were going to need to change the mascot. So, they went through all these polls and surveys and yada yada. The mascot chosen and voted in was the dragon. Then they had students submit their own drawings and things of what the mascot should look like. Somebody that won was then ridiculed by many, many parents on Facebook. Unknowingly, they probably didn't know who made it, but it was in fact a student, and they're like, oh, it looks like the devil. Oh, we're the Fulton Demons now. And there was like all this negativity, but it wouldn't have been there had they not brought it.
Yeah.
So,
It's kind of like smacking a spider on the wall just because it's a spider. And
now
saying,
you have to paint.
And not even that.
Or you need a fire extinguisher in my case or whatever, because I can't handle that.
But I'm just saying, like, just because a spider's on the wall doesn't mean that it's bad.
Right.
Right? Not every spider that we encounter is venomous. And matter of fact, most are not, especially here, right?
Right.
And so we just smack it because of a fear. You're exactly right. Like, you're right. Like, all kidding aside, like hitting it with the, the old, what did you say? Fire extinguisher,
Well, because I would light it on fire first, maybe, or chemical warfare.
Yeah, right.
It seems reasonable,
Well, and that's a great point because that's exactly what we do when something isn't within our, whatever. But I just looked it up while you were chatting. Mm-hmm. And so it's called the, what is it called? The Satanic Temple.
Yes, I've heard of that.
But what it is, and I just am bringing this up because of like challenge of thought. It kind of goes along with these like epiphanies I feel like we have, is like there is other schools of thought out there. Now, do I think that, they need to call it the ideology of Satan? Like, no, I think you're starting to, you're purposely poking a bear at that point in time. Like, I don't know really where you feel like you're going to get with it. But then I also understand too, like extremism. So it's like, all right, I get it. But I guess what I do like is like the idea of like allowing people to challenge thought a little bit and allowing people to come to their own.
Right. And I think that's what's missing is like that general respect for people to do their own thing. And like, hey, you're a decent person, you're a good neighbor. Like, I don't believe what you believe, but it's none of my business because we are living in harmony and it's fine. Like, I don't understand why we need everybody to be the same as us in order to feel like we accept them. And then it gets to the point where that unaccepting or intolerance of becomes hatred.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and that's where I feel like it turns. It's like so weird. It's like either you conform to these ideas and you be this, or you're hated. It's like that's really fucked up.
Yeah. And
that's where I was struggling with that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, we just see it in so many ways.
Yeah.
And, leaders of certain types of churches, again, not all churches. There's some really great ones out there. But, a lot of leaders will use those biases to control their people, to oppress people, to, you know.
And there lies the real issue that I think that I have that
Yep.
maybe hasn't come up as pointed as that. But yeah, it becomes an area of control.
Yeah.
And I guess that's really what I'm fighting against is like all of these areas of power and control. Like I guess I've begun to notice that the cycle of power and abuse that happens is more than even just within families. It's societal, you know?
Yeah.
Like we don't condone abusive
Some call
spouses,
it the patriarchy,
right? We don't tolerate that. We've come to an age now where we can recognize, abuse within a home, but yeah, there are so many abuses that continue. Like our whole society is really set up that way. Our whole society is set up in a way of power and control.
Yeah.
And I guess I
Oppression.
just am reaching this part where I'm starting to say like, nah, fuck that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
welcome
that's-
to it, man.
Right? Yeah.
That's I think the biggest struggle, is existing and not falling prey to all of the things that the world tells us, right? Or our culture specifically. Like I enjoyed your podcast with Amanda about social media and the good, the bad, the ugly, and how I'm like listening to it and like talking to you guys in the car while I'm listening to it because I'm like, it's great for marketing. It's great to have a presence online when you own a business. Like, it's great to keep up with friends or family that are not living nearby. But there's this other thing that's happening with like, addiction to it and keyboard muscles, like we say,
keyboard warriors,
and now people treat each other like that in public and on the roads, and we have this false sense of entitlement because as soon as someone doesn't look, say, do just like us, we are. And you see it everywhere. I see people talking to each other in public spaces the way they would comment to a stranger who disagreed with them on a news article or something. And that negativity, I feel like, is infiltrating the culture so much so that the divide we have politically is almost like going beyond that now.
Oh, no, yeah.
And,
we are in a weird, kind of in a weird time, I think. And that's the thing, I think, like, I don't know. And I have this weird, it's not a weird thought, I guess, but I just have this thought that I cling to that is just like, people, stop. Like, we connect on so many other places.
Right.
We are human, and we tend to care for our own, meaning family, and there are so many things about us that are good as human beings that we can relate with one another on and cherish. Even you and I being, 6 years apart in age, have already touched on things that we've experienced throughout our lives, and maybe they happened at different points in our lives, but they happened, and we can connect about them, and maybe your experience was different than mine, but you had the experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so, it's not about like same, it's about celebrating different and different, because it all got us to a point where here we are, and we should be able to talk about that,
Yeah, but
That's my
instead
thought, I
it's
guess. I
like
don't know.
it's becoming more stifled and
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's weird. It's like all these freedoms that we say that we have, and yet we stifle one another. It's like, and it's not government that's doing that. It's not the man that's doing that. We are doing that to each other.
Right.
We are stifling each other. We are shutting each other down.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that people are influenced, and oftentimes it could be fear tactics or things like that kind of encourage people to maybe dislike other people for certain reasons. Or, right now in government, we're seeing DEI being shut down, and now it's going to, public schools aren't supposed to be using it now. And it's like, well, what are we doing? Are we getting rid of the Department of Ed, or are we telling the schools what to do,
Yeah,
And
it is confusing.
Yeah, so I just feel like, when we are facing these things publicly, like diversity, equity, inclusion doesn't matter anymore, then, that definitely like impacts the way people think, and sometimes not in the direction that we would want it to go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess I look at it too in a sense of like I just would want people to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because they're being told to or not because there's a mandate, but we do the right thing because it's the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe I'm trusting too much in our humanness that we can do that, but
No, I just think that
You
people
know.
are influenced particularly by fear.
yeah, it's
and
true
if they're
too.
taught to fear
Well,
something, it turns into hate. And
which
then,
goes right back to our conversation with what we were having about where we were at and separating kind of, you know, where the turning points and where we made different choices for ourselves was. I really decided for me, I didn't want to live in fear and I didn't want to hide anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Same.
And it was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do these two things, and what does that look like? You know?
There's
I
such
agree.
freedom in that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot.
I know, we didn't even talk about music. It started with Y2K, and now we're like, you know,
Gotten down the rabbit hole.
Rasputin over here.
Yeah. Well, I think what we really were talking about was phases of our lives, and I think that we have talked about how our thoughts have changed as we have gone through the moons and the phases of our lives. You know, we have grown. We now, at the ages that we are at, are able to sit across the table from one another and have a very different conversation than we probably had 20 years ago. You know?
My goodness.
And
yes.
I think that ties directly into actually what we were talking about in a way is, you know, talking about phases. But let's have some fun and talk about music for a minute in the closing.
Okay.
Because music has been such a huge story, backdrop to our lives, right? Like
Yeah.
we talked about, you know. So, all right, we already talked about your love of Fish. Do you still listen to Fish?
Yeah, I do.
Do you
Actually, several years ago, one of the songs that Liam started learning when he was picking up the bass was Down with Disease.
No kidding.
And I was like, oh, I did that.
Yeah.
There I am. Yeah. But
yeah, all right.
yeah, so they're still in there, and I still love like you know, different jam bands that I found during that point in life, like Mo and John Brown's Body. You know,
Oh yeah, man. The
Yeah.
iTunes or iTown, not iTunes. iTunes is Apple. Don't sue me. Talking about
Yeah,
iTown
no,
Records.
we
which
don't know
was,
what we're talking about.
Sim Redmond Band. Sim. S-I-M.
Oh, yeah,
Yep,
I
Sim
forgot
Redmond
about
Band.
that.
John Brown's Body. They
Yeah.
were all on the iTown Records, which was an independent record label out of Ithaca, New York.
Ithaca,
Yep.
yes. And
Yep.
now do you ever listen to Root Shock? I love them.
No.
They're more like reggae.
I love like I do. I was just listening to it. I like kind of the Oi, I guess. Not Oi. What is it? Ska, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, like the band I'm thinking about is Bumpin' Uglies, which have kind of like that reggae. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
But they've got that reggae feel to them.
Yeah, a little.
Dirty Heads a little bit, although they're more on the rap. Like they're more, you know.
Yeah. I think Sublime kind of like
yeah,
toyed around with that
yeah,
too.
yeah, exactly. That like punk and
Yeah.
reggae. Like,
Yes.
yeah, it's ska. It's ska without the horns.
Yeah. I don't know what it's called, and I'm really bad with that kind of thing. Like I'm never the one that's like well spoken and has all the lingo, but I still listen to a lot of it, and you can call it whatever you want.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you think are some bands that you listened to back in the day that I'll give you my top 5 after, but top 5 bands from back in the day, doesn't matter what age that was, whatever you consider back in the day, top 5 bands that you would still pull forward on your playlist today.
There's so many. I can only
If you have more than 5, that's okay. I was just trying to say, like, you know.
Well, and it's like it depends on the season too, because I don't know if you're like this, but I have like summertime music. Like I love to listen to like Dave Matthews Band, Allman Brothers, like those kinds of things in the summer.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You know, but okay, I'll try to just pull 5, and they're in no particular order, and they have no particular season that they have to be connected to.
Okay,
How's
okay,
that? Okay,
fair.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay. So Fish, I do listen to them still.
Okay, so Fish, number 1.
Okay. Indigo Girls.
Ooh, okay. Number 2.
Patty Griffin.
Ooh, going folk. Okay.
There's no rhyme or reason to this. See, because
No,
now
no,
I'm going
no.
to say Tool.
All right.
And okay, one more. Oh my God, I'm such a sucker for like classic rock, 80s rock.
Okay.
Not necessarily like hair bands, but like,
No, like the I think of the iHeartRadio 80s station. Gia
stuff
loves
like that.
Okay.
I love Journey.
Okay.
Okay. Because I'm a singer.
Yeah.
And so like I love stuff that I can like listen to and rock out or whatever, but like vocalizing is how I like stim out. You know what I mean?
So my top 5 are going to be very much all over the place too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start out with my all-time favorite band. Let me see if you could guess it. Would you be able to guess, do you think, what my all-time favorite band is at this point in my life?
I have no freaking clue because you are like me where,
my music
you
taste
listen
goes.
to freaking everything.
I know it. Mm-hmm. I literally too. So the Allman Brothers Band, I have come to say that actually there's 2 bands, and and people in the Vertigo Nation are going to go, what the fuck? I have 2 bands that I can say are my absolute favorite bands, and I guarantee I listen to at least one song of theirs every day from both of these bands. I already said the Allman Brothers Band. I listen to the Allman Brothers Band probably more than any other band in my playlist, actually.
Yeah, they're great.
The second band that I listen to probably equally as much would be Tool.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
I love Tool. Yeah,
The third band that I can honestly say that I still listen to almost, so Allman Brothers definitely is probably on every playlist that I've got on my phone. There's at least probably one Allman Brothers song. Mm-hmm. And then I would say Tool would definitely be a close second, if not tied. Deftones would be the third.
Oh
I bet you
I
bet you if you looked through all of my playlists, the Deftones would be there. But then
Liam can drum to them and sing while he drums.
That's insane because they're each album that they did got more complicated in the musicianship. So that's incredible.
Yep.
So Allman Brothers, Tool, Deftones, and then here's where I'm going to throw people for a loop.
Okay.
Because so obviously I would say other than the Allman Brothers, Tool, Deftones are kind of related.
All right, wait, let me guess. Okay, so you're going to throw people for a loop. So is it like the Celtic Women?
Nope. Janis Joplin.
Yeah! She is like, she just puts it all out there.
Yeah, man. And so like probably the 4th artist that I listen to consistently throughout my life, I'm talking about who have consistently been on playlists, consistently, been there in some capacity, Janis Joplin. Mm. And then the number 5 band is going to be tough, actually, because as I'm going through playlists in my mind, now I have a weird affinity for pop music. Even though, like, I am probably a hard rock and metal guy more, I do have an affinity for pop music. Mm-hmm. And so I do have to admit that I do like a little hip hop from time to time.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, so I got to get into that. So anyway, before I digress, I would say the Wu-Tang Clan.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Would be
there
my
you go.
Yeah, fuck yeah, man. I love the Wu-Tang Clan.
That's awesome.
I love Wu-Tang, man.
Yeah.
Ghostface Killer, RZA, GZA, Method Man, Old Dirty Bastard. Love some Old Dirty Bastard, man. I love that, Shimmy Shimmy Ya, one of my favorite songs. So anyway, Wu-Tang for life.
Yep. Yeah, dude. The 90s, like, hip-hop movement was so good. There was so much good music.
So 90s hip-hop would probably be what? Like Notorious B.I.G.? Is he 90s?
Yeah, he would be 90s.
Jay-Z, 90s?
I'd say probably, but I remember him more from, like, 2000 and up.
Because that's where I've noticed I've had a hard time as I've gotten...
Not really a Jay-Z fan.
Well, and I've noticed that I've had a hard time as I've gotten older, like, recognizing what artists come from what decades. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, especially now, like, Notorious B.I.G., even though he's probably been passed on now longer than more than his career is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And not in any disrespect, just... But, like,
I love Snoop.
Snoop, dude, he's still bringing it.
He's
man.
Freaking awesome. I even listened to his affirmation stuff that like he made for his grandkids.
Oh, no kidding,
dude. You
Yeah,
know?
good stuff, huh?
Yeah.
His new album with Dr. Dre, Missionary Man, is a fucking killer album, I gotta tell you.
Dr. Dre, too. I love Eminem.
Yep.
Yep.
Eminem, I can take or leave. I don't know. I never got on the Eminem train.
I did, and I still am. There's some songs that are like, I don't really connect with, or, he's kind of an angry dude in his younger years, but I respect the art. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that he's done that I'm like, I don't know if anybody else could do that.
So is there a genre of music that you think that you probably relate to most? I can say yes for me.
Gosh.
Which is funny because I'm going to say yes. So I'm going to give you an example. Actually, take you off the hook for a minute.
Okay, yeah, let me
So
think.
for me, the genre of music that I most identify with, which is really strange because of the 5 bands I named, none of those bands are in this genre, which is really fucked up. But punk music
Oh, yeah.
would be the music that I think that I identify with most. Like, I love Bad Religion. My absolute favorite punk band is Social Distortion.
I love Bad Religion because there's not a lot of punk bands that actually have good vocals.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and he's actually good.
He's
Yeah.
very good, and he's got like a PhD.
Yeah, he's from Cornell.
Yeah,
He teaches at Cornell. He's an
Yeah.
adjunct professor.
he's pretty cool.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
California punk dude teaching
Yeah.
at Cornell.
I just finally saw them live like 2 summers ago.
Did
in
you?
Pittsburgh area. Yeah, at the 4 Chord Music Fest. We took Liam.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. Lagwagon was there. Pennywise,
Okay.
Descendants.
We're in
Like-
the, I am actually wearing. Do you see what that is?
What is that?
Hey, Pennywise.
I thought it was a cowboy.
It's the
Oh,
Pennywise.
it's the Pennywise face.
I am actually wearing a Pennywise logo
That's
and
cool.
Heavy Hitter.
Oh,
Shout out
my
to Heavy Hitter, who I
goodness.
just saw at the Song and Dance.
Oh,
Not that they're
awesome.
probably listening to this, but Heavy Hitter's kind of like a hardcore, metalcore. I don't know. They're
Yeah,
heavy.
Liam's
They're heavy.
into all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely. It's funny too because I think, I have always loved hard and heavy music like we were talking about, but definitely Maddox has introduced me to some stuff that is far heavier than I ever imagined that I
Oh,
listen
yeah.
to. And I'll bet you of all of this stuff he has shown me, I probably like more than half of it. More than half of it, I would say. There's some stuff that I'm just like, okay, dude, like I can listen to a song or two, but then there's other stuff where I'm like, okay, I can get into that. Like he showed me a couple of bands that I've liked that I've started to listen to a lot. And then I got into Sleep Token lately, which is kind of bizarre because
I think you sent me some of their stuff. a
yeah,
while back.
they blend styles. Like that's the thing nowadays in music is to blend all these styles. So they blend like Euro pop and hip hop and metal. It's a bizarre, but I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
like
think
it.
that's where I'm at is I prefer to kind of hear things that are new. Depending on what kind of mood I'm in, do I just want music on or am I like trying to connect with the lyrics? Which that's where I have a hard time with some of the like the screaming stuff and
Yeah.
because I like it, but I have a difficult time understanding what they're saying.
That's so weird. Maddox and I literally just had this conversation yesterday. I said, dude, I love the music that you listen to as far as technicality. And I
Yeah.
said, but the hard part for me is I'm a lyricist.
Yeah.
I'm a songwriter. And so when I was writing songs, the lyrics I really mulled over and wanted to make sure that they said something. And I guess that's the thing. If you take that much time, like I want to understand what it is you're saying,
Right.
So yeah, I'm with you on that. I have a hard time with that with some of the music too. But but it's just a different space and time.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I forgot to say Taking Back Sunday. I love them.
oh yeah.
Oh, I love them.
Post punk, pop punk, I guess you could call
They're
it.
kind of, I don't know, emo-ish, but
Yeah, then you go down all those different.
yeah, I don't know. Call them whatever you want.
Yeah, I agree.
But I like them.
Yeah, I haven't listened to them in a long time.
Oh,
but it's funny
and the
how
Get
they're.
Up Kids, I love them too.
Oh, yeah, and all these bands are starting to tour again, which is weird.
Yeah, Chris and I saw the Get Up Kids recently in Buffalo.
No kidding.
Yeah, we just saw them over the winter, and it was a great show. And they did the whole "Something to Write Home About" album, which a song on there was the first song that he and I learned together, and it was actually our wedding song.
That's right.
It's called "I'll Catch You," and
Yep.
yeah, and
I remember that.
It was
do
a
remember
great
that.
show, and they played the whole album, and it was so fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I remember. So, yeah, the most recent. So, while we're talking about that, and we'll kind of end on this note, but the most recent concert that I went to. Well, that's not true. The most recent concert I went to was Maddox when I just saw Heavy Hitter and 156 Silence, which was an absolute incredible show. But before that, I had gone to Buffalo and saw the Motley Crue, Poison, Def Leppard,
Oh yeah,
Joan Jett. Yeah, I think that was it.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Where'd you see them?
Buffalo in the
I was going to say
Buffalo Bill Stadium.
St. Luke Nursing Home, or
No,
no, I'm just
no,
kidding.
no.
I'm totally kidding because I
no.
love all those. I've seen
Yeah,
Def
but you know
Leppard
what's really
before.
this is this is another rabbit hole. I'll tie it up from here. But what really disappoints me, I think, about these bands now is everybody uses backing tracks. So it's like you're not even 100% sure. Because listen, everybody knows that Vince Neil's vocals just suck live nowadays, and they were like perfect at this show. So I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I hope I didn't just pay all this money to see these fuckers lip sync, but I think I did.
Probably, but it's okay because you got to relive, your inner child. Little Sean was happy, know.
And I will say though, I will put this out there: Poison, Bret Michaels, that dude.
He
did bring it, and Poison stole the show in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they probably aren't even one of my top favorite bands, especially from that era. I think there's so many other bands who I would have paid more attention to than them, and yet they put on the best show. And you could tell that they were playing live, at least best to my knowledge. I mean, I guess you never really know, but he was talking to the crowd in between the vocals and stuff, and then picking that up and singing along with. So it felt at least a lot more live than Motley did. Motley felt very choreographed, very, Which
bums me out because I love Nikki Sixx, and I feel like, did you ever read Heroin Diaries?
I did.
Oh,
that
man.
book is incredible.
And he's just come so far, and he's like,
I would agree with that.
and to like be able to, I feel like, to be able to return to that scene minus like the drugs and the chaos and stuff, that's gotta be, that takes a lot of work, I would think.
I would think so too. I would agree with that. I also gotta say, I also gotta say that I like 6 a.m. better than Motley at this point. Like his
other.
I have found that I enjoy listening to them a lot more than Motley. Unfortunately, I don't really enjoy Motley as much as I used to. I know that when I was a kid, I listened to them a ton. I wore it out, but just after that show, I was just kind of like,
okay, I can close the book on this one.
Yeah,
that's all right. You're allowed to morph and change.
Phases of our lives.
That's right.
Phases of our lives. So hey, Vertigo Nation, thank you for tuning in and listening into this conversation. Definitely hope that there's some sound bites and earworms in here that got your head spinning a little bit. Kelly, I want to thank you so much for popping in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
I'm glad you had a good time, man, because you've never done. I know that you've been wanting to get on the podcast. I know that you've been a listener, and I hugely, I can't thank you enough, and I appreciate that so much. But yeah, I would love to have you back too, and we can kind of do a follow-up conversation as well.
I would love to see this conversation we just had like on a map, because I feel like it would just be like like all over nobody can see me moving my finger.
No, we've got two people here who self-claim that there's some adult ADHD in the room. For sure.
I'm diagnosed.
Oh, are you?
Yes.
Oh, see, I'm not diagnosed. I
was officially diagnosed in 2022.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I never got really into all the phases that we were going to talk about, but I would have got there, but we'll save that for another time.
All right. Yeah, so you need to come back then so we can talk about that.
For sure.
We'll have to come back and talk, because I'm very curious about that and Yeah, and for my own personal research, I think too, I'm just very curious about it. Even though, like I said, I've never been diagnosed with that. But so anyway, yeah, I appreciate you coming in, and I think we did. I think yes, our conversation was all over the place, but I think because we were talking about different places in our lives and where thoughts have changed and things like that. So in our own way, we did stay on topic, and we did a hell of a job.
I found us to be incredibly interesting.
So with that, Vertigo Nation, I hope this made your head spin. And thank you again. If you're new here, thank you for sticking with us. If you have been here before, hey, I appreciate you. Keep coming back. Tell a friend, spread the word. Let everybody know that we're here and we're not stopping this train from rolling. So with that, thank you, Vertigo Nation. Have a great rest of your whatever day, night, wherever you are, and what time you're listening to this. Who gives a shit? I'm rambling, and let your head spin.